Well, the governor called this special session because she wanted the legislature to get started on addressing the big budget problem we're facing as the recession continues and as we've gotten bad economic news since we left the legislature last spring with a balanced budget. Unfortunately, we've lost revenue to the tune of almost $2 billion. So we have a huge budget shortfall we need to address, and this special session was about hearing the governor's proposal as well as letting the public comment on it so we can start to tackle the problem. I'm glad I serve on the Ways and Means Committee because I was able to sit through hours of testimony from people all over the state coming in and telling us how the Washington state budget affects them. There were a few stories that were particularly powerful for me. For example, we heard from some young boys who are part of a program called Readiness to Learn. And not only do they go to school, but they come from economically challenged families. And they explained how the services they got through Readiness to Learn were really keeping them in school. They were native Spanish speakers, and they had learned great English to the point where they were actually helping other students become bilingual. And I think about the opportunities for them in the future that have been made possible because they got some extra attention right when they needed it. The other thing that was very powerful for me is that we've all heard the statement, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And certainly that is the case with many of our human service programs, that when we emphasize prevention and treatment, especially of alcohol and drug addiction, we not only improve people's lives, but we save money down the road that otherwise would be part of our juvenile justice system, or we would be paying these costs for jails and places in prisons. And we heard from one man who was particularly poignant about the effect of some of our healthcare programs on his future. He had been an addict, he had lost his teeth, and by being able to get dental services, he was able to fix his teeth, regain his confidence, get back out there and get a job. So he moved from being someone who was a user of state services to someone who's contributing to our economy. And I think that's the power of the state resources that we're able to provide, and that's what we don't want to lose by making these budget cuts in the wrong way. In the end, we were able to come up with nearly $500 million of reductions to state government, and we were able to do that with votes from Democrats and Republicans, a bipartisan approach. It clearly doesn't solve the entire problem that we're facing, but it gets us well on our way to solving that problem. It's a significant down payment toward the ultimate solution that we have to come up with in the regular session, which starts in January. I think many people thought when the governor proposed a full $2 billion all cuts budget that the legislature could come in and maybe just adopt that full sale. But I think it's important for us to remember that the legislature's obligation is very different than the governor's. The governor proposes a budget. The legislature has the obligation, number one, to really conduct a public process. I think there's nothing the public wants more than accountability and transparency in how we make these decisions. So we had literally hours of testimony on the governor's proposal with people coming in from all over the state to talk about education, higher education, human services, healthcare, and to give their feedback on the impact of these proposed reductions on families across the state. Second, the legislature has the obligation to not just take the governor's proposals, which she works out with her budget staff and her agencies, and we need to scrutinize those agencies. Maybe they have some blind spots and haven't thoroughly scrubbed their own administrative budgets. Perhaps their priorities are different than legislative priorities. So we really have to take an alternate perspective where we look at each of the state agencies and see if we can come up with some alternative ways to meet our goals of serving the people of Washington state but still save money. And then third, The governor has to convince herself when she puts a proposal forward. The legislature collaborates. We have 148 legislators from all over the state, House and Senate, Democrat and Republican, and it's our job to come together and figure out how to get a majority of the House and a majority of the Senate on the same page when it comes to the budget reductions. When we get back in January, we still have a big job in front of us, and it's going to be one in which we look at not only solving the rest of this budget shortfall, but we want to give people hope for the future, and that means we have an economic imperative to look at jobs, to look at what the state can do to partner with the private sector to create more jobs and more job opportunities for Washington citizens. We also know that in order to balance the budget, if we can figure out ways to save more money, then we won't have to make devastating cuts to health care or to education. So we're going through a process with Senator Harper and Hargrove to scrutinize across state government, look at reforms we've already made and see what the next steps are to improve outcomes. We want more accountability and transparency in how the public dollars are spent, and the public deserves to know when they offer up their hard-earned funds in terms of our tax revenue, that it's going to be well spent for the things they care about: public safety, good schools, and giving people opportunities to move ahead. I think it's pretty clear that over the last 3 years, it's been cut and cut and cut some more in order to address the problems of the Great Recession. Now I think we need a balanced approach, and I've heard from many people from Spokane and from around the state who've said they may be willing to pay a little bit more if it means we can keep good schools, if it means we can keep public safety, if it means we can keep the social safety net intact. And so after we look at further ways we can make reforms and efficiencies in our system, and after we do a reduction process throughout state government, before we go too far, we may be talking about a revenue package that we would send to the voters and give them the opportunity to have a more balanced approach to how we solve the budget shortfall.